П.А.Ойунский himself used to narrate since his childhood and was familiar with all the Олонхо suits in the neighborhood. During his short life, which was cut off by the Stalin's policy of repressions in the 30s, П.А.Ойунский managed to put down in writing a grandiose monument to Nurgun Botur, Nurgun Botur the Swift, like Elias Olonхо, a scholar and a folklorist who in the 19th century composed the body of the Karelian Finnish epic Kalevala of the surviving fragments. In 36,000 poetry lines, П.А.Ойунский imprinted the most comprehensive version of what might be called the body of plot motives, which were operated by the Олонхо suits in his childhood. Usually, storytellers, depending on the audience reaction, either reduced if their audience did not listen properly or expanded Олонхо if it was well listened, introducing new story blocks in order to please their audience. П.А.Ойунский set an ambitious goal and carried it out. He recorded a full text of his Олонхо, all the plot lines once heard and taken over from the famous Олонхо suits such as Panteleimon Sliptsov, Mandeliman, Ivan Nikolaevich Vinokurov, Tabakhirov, Timofey Vasilievich Zakharov, Chebia. Thanks to that feat of the scientist, Nurgun Botur the Swift is now on a par with the greatest epics of the world, actually witnessing the highest level of oral literature of the Yakuts. Certainly, the presence of such a grand monument to the epic book in the series of collected 126 full texts of Олонхо, which are kept in the archive of the Yakut Scientific Center of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences, could not impress the UNESCO experts, who proclaimed in 2005 the Олонхо as being the masterpiece of oral intangible heritage. Full text of the epic of П.А.Ойунский would sound probably 16 hours, according to Г.Г.Колесов's soundtrack, which lasts 8.5 hours, unparalleled act and reconstruction of Nurgun Botur the Swift. While preparing to record for many years at the Old Union National Record Company Melodia in Leningrad, Г.Г.Колесов thoughtfully and correctly cut the text of both a narrative and a song part, so that visitors to the museum could have an idea about the structure and music of the Oyunskий's Олонхо and the idea of Kolesov. We have created 4-hour lessons in Yakut and 1-hour version in Russian to make you feel the richness of language, plot collisions, a variety of images, song melodies, of rich oral literature of the Yakuts, kept in the memory of people for centuries. Yes, we lived without computers, books, TV, radio, and theater. But when an Olonchos suit would come, people gathered and prepared the wood for the evening and night, so as not to leave the place and not to interrupt the images sequence taking place in the 3 worlds of the universe. In the time of the creation, when heroes from heaven, ancestors, the first Yakut, were descended from the sky. For life on earth, they overcome all obstacles to find their betrothed, to marry, to return and settle in the country, to fulfill the high destiny of the gods, to become the ancestors of the Yakut people. So, Г.Г.Колесов is performing the П.А.Ойунский's Олонхо, Нюргун Боотур the Swift.
Былыргы был жахыктак жылым бырал ер бырамаммындатыгыр урук кок суулак жылым улар ер улагаттыгыр.
In ancient times, the middle world was created, the land of people, ancestors of the Sahara, the relatives of the Ai deities. The original Mother Earth was created with rising sun, dancing with trees, which were shedding their leaves and dying in the desolation runaway, decaying, drying and re-emerging due to abundance of water. This land lies on the Great Sea, and it is framed by the stone mountains. Before the advent of people, the good Ai deities of the upper world, led by the supreme deity Urung Ulan, were at swords' points with their eternal enemies, Abai. For a long time they fought with spears and hand to hand, but they were all immortal. The vault of heaven wavered because of the battle, stirred up the middle world, spilled the underworld. They decided to agree with each other. Born to robbery above the upper world, led by Ulutuyar Ulu Surun Toyon, great haughty Mr. Raven, the patron of shamans, knowing that the people of Ai will always revenge for their crimes, that wolves with dogs will not live in peace, settled far from people and went to the southern sky, where the clouds run in the opposite direction. Silent nighttime burglars with fur in their souls, Abasi of the underworld, headed by Arsan Dole, knowing that people will try to catch them up and revenge, and in the darkness of the underworld it will not be easy for people to get to them, they decided to take refuge in the underworld after looting and robbery. Heads of the named three families, the inhabitants of the universe, knowing the integrity of the gods of fate, Odun Bis, Chinggis Khan, Dilgatoyon, chose them as judges, the supreme arbiters for inhabitants of all three worlds, who have vowed to punish anyone who tries to undermine the datum axis of the three circling worlds. Ayingasiertoyon was a younger brother of the supreme deity Urung Artoyon, and he had a pregnant wife, Ayi Noreljin Khotun. Well before the deadline of a 9-moon period, a baby, laughing and shouting, fell out of the womb. That's how a hero of our Olonxo was born. He is of an exuberant disposition. He screams, pounds feet and feasts, threatens to kill the whole world. Frightened grandparents refer to the judge's overlords. The judges send the baby to the underworld, to the judgment seat of three cradles, to the old pythoness Bekçeger Begeluken. The pythoness, while predicting, sings, "Destroy, crash, oppress all living souls, both good and bad people from the middle world. Scatter ashes of their tribe." That is, she anticipates that the celestial being was born with such strength that can destroy all the worlds and destroy all flesh. Fearing violent temper of a newborn, the gods ordered to tie him with a magic noose to the octagonal column which is on the Iron Mountain, swirling like a vortex at the edge of white sky. This boy will become a defender of people, a hero named Nurgun Botur the Swift. Gods decide the boy would be released only in the case of trouble and misery in the middle world, to soothe and kill destroyers. The first people of the middle world, sent by the gods from the upper world to the middle, were Sahasarin Toyon and his wife, Sabiya Bai Khatun, who are considered to be the forefathers of all future tribes of the Ayi Aimak, as the Yakuts called themselves in Olonxo, the relatives of the Ayi deities. They were settled in a spacious valley of Saidilike. When Sabiya Bai Khatun is in labor, she is begging the goddess of childbirth, Ayihit, Since then, all new mothers appeal to the goddess of childbirth for help in their songs. Patroness of women in labor descends from the middle tier down to earth in the similitude of a white mare. Sabiye Bai Khotun gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Ayisit sings Algis, a blessing song. The goddess of fertility, which is happiness and a large family, baptizes a boy as Kundiribine and a girl as Tuyarimako. On the third day after the birth, the goddess, again changing into a white mare, departs on a white cloud. Sabiya Bai Khotun, having called together 12 girls, holds a rite of the Ayihit's farewell ceremony, organizing a festive feast. Children grow up. One day, Kundiribine, longing for feats, starts singing. A young athlete boldly calls upon the heroes of the upper and underworld to cope with him. His splurge turns fatal. In 3 days, a monster arrives in the similitude of the three-headed dragon, one of the main heroes, fire-breathing Abahe Od Usutake. He demands a bride, Tuyarimako, who allegedly is predestined for him. Looking at the young hero, he taunts, jeers that the young athlete is too weak to cope with him, Abahe hero. After a short battle, Od Usutake outfights Kundiribine and kidnaps his sister Tuyarimako. People complain about the Abahe monsters of the underworld to the land spirit An Alakçın Khotun. Having listened to their complaints, Itchi turns to Urung Artoyon for help, and the highest order is given to release Nurgun Botur the Swift to protect the middle world. The supreme deity commands to take Nurgun down to the middle world, to the expanses of the valley, with his sister, Kaladike Aitalinko. Parents are hesitant to send their daughter with Nurgun, who always will be fighting. So they send their daughter together with their youngest son, Urung Ulan. The eldest daughter of the Celestials, shaman of the upper world Ayi Unsur Udagan, is coming down to the middle world on a black cloud together with her brother Nurgun. An elder brother, the heavenly warrior Mulju Bere, also on a black cloud comes down with a younger brother Urung Ulan and a younger sister Aitalinko to the middle world, to the valley of Kaladike, where they have already built a house. Then Ayi Umsur Udagan sings a loath to depart, Algis. She promises to help in rugged times. Freed from the shackles, Nurgun Botur begins to flex his muscles. From his blows on the stone, it burns up. From his feet stamping, the land starts roaring. A storm starts ruffling. Boulders rise and falls as the rain. After playing enough, the young hero falls asleep and sleeps soundly 30 days and nights. Feeling hungry, he wakes up and runs to the forest to glorify the taiga spirit Bai Bayanai. He asks the patron of hunting to present him an animal. A cheerful wood spirit, glorified Bai and I, deeply satisfied with courteous treatment, answers ostentatiously. He says that he can present as much game as a suppliant is able to lift up and carry it home. Nurgun, having looked around, catches sight of a huge elk which seems to dare to fight. The unarmed hero bops it on ahead and kills it. That's how Nurgun gets his first clothing made of the elk's skin. He brings it meat home. Next morning, Nurgun Botur gets sight of a horse Jurahara sent to him from the heavens. For 30 days, Nurgun Botur has been breaking his horse, which finally recognizes him as a master. Then, Nurgun, riding his horse, goes to the blacksmith Kutai Baksilan. The blacksmith forges heroic weapons and iron armor for him. Armed for a battle, Nurgun Botur is singing an oath. Not to have mercy upon enemies, Abase. One morning, Nurgun Botur tells his brother Urung Ulan about his dream. In the similitude of a white Siberian crane flew the soul of Tuyarimako, the bride destined to Urung Ulan. She cried and begged for help, and Urung Ulan immediately sets off to free his bride. Departing, he looks around and sees Ichi of his homeland, An Alakchin, who is making the ritual of divination using a spoon tierech. She foretells defeat to the young athlete. A spoon falls upside down 3 times. Weeping, she predicts that although Urung Ulan will die and rise again 3 times, he is going to be happy with his bride, Tuyarimako. Then the spirit of homeland breastfeeds Urung Ulan. It gives him a heroic power. After the departure of the young hero, all of a sudden, a creature in the similitude of a monstrous octopus arrives, the underworld Abase, who has 3 shadows, Eser Harbir. He kidnaps Aitalinko and disappears. Nurgun Botur immediately harks after the thief and arrives at the underworld. His horse stops by the sea of fire and asks the owner to hold tight, as they are now going to fly over the sea of fire. Having flown, they hide in ambush. When the kidnapper appears, Nurgun cuts 3-headed, 8-legged snake that Eser Harbir was riding, takes Aitalinko away, and turning her into a hair ball, put it in the left ear of his horse, sends it home and commands to come back to him on the first call. Eser Harbir is annoyed that he could not keep the bride, but still threatens his enemy. A long, heroic battle of Nurgun against Eser Harbir begins. During the flight, they destroy the underworld. The head of the underworld, Arsan Dolai, addresses the overlords of high heaven. He asks to send 3 heavenly guards so that they could link them both, and sending them to the sacred mountain of gold, where the sun and the moon are born, where the young moon lolls behind a silver mountain, where the baby sun plays behind a golden mountain. By a decree of fate, lords of heavenly guards see the heroes off. But even there, the hero's battle brings destruction. By pleas of residents of the three worlds, one of the gods of fate, Jilgatoyon, orders to move the fight to the underworld through a fiery sea into the abyss of death, Luchurkucho, to the island which rotates among the ways of the sea of fire. Only two could find room on this cliff. Exhausted heroes pray in aid of their sister shamans. An elder sister of Nurgun's bring Ilge, which makes the hero stronger than before. A shaman of the underworld, Itikahaidan, in turn, throws blood clot to Esaharbir. The Abasi warrior also recovers his strength. Esaharbir throws Nurgun's head down into the sea, but the Ayum Sur catches it with a tambourine. Then the hero throws down the underworld hero, but Itikahaidan also tries to catch with a tambourine. But a sister of Nurgun blows her tambourine through, and Esaharbir falls into the fiery sea and dies. Having won, Nurgun Botur, turned into a falcon, rises from the depths, say goodbye to Sur Udagan, and calls his horse. The horse appears. The hero takes out a hairball, and his sister appears. Then the defender of the middle world hawks all inputs, Arctic to the underworld, and they go home. What happens to the younger brother of Nurgun? Urung Ulan arrives in a rich country. Near a luxury yacht, he was welcomed by beautiful girls, i.e., with kumis chorons in their hands, and was invited to the house to rest. Urung Ulan, not heeding the warning of his horse about treachery of werewolves, Abasi girls, accepts the invitation. As soon as he walks into the house and sits on the honorary plank, they immediately broke up in two, and Urung Ulan falls into the abyss. The Abasi girls, turned by Oot Usutaku's order into earthly beauties, are accompanying his fall with laughter. And who will help? Only a true horse. The horse of Urung Ulan cries to heaven for the salvation of his master. At the request of the horse, the heavenly shaman Sur frees her younger brother Urung Ulan. She pulls the thread from the golden hair of their divine father. As soon as the solar thread touches Urung Ulan, he comes alive. On the advice of his sister, he girds himself quintuple, and people pull him out of the abyss. The elder sister is persuading him to return home, but the hero refuses, and having turned into a falcon with bells on the tail, flies over a fiery sea of Muskudulu and goes down to the underworld, directly to the iron house of Wat Usutaka to start the battle. Wat Usutaka, having turned into a huge fiery serpent, winds around the back of the hero and begins to suck his blood. But Urung Ulan is resourceful enough to propose to become relatives and asks for a hand of Wat Usutaka's sister, Kiskiskidan. The Abasi girl is very happy. She sings that she rejected many heroes and suitors, waiting just for him. Delighted, Wat Usutaka frees Urung Ulan. When Wat Usutaka leaves to provide food for the wedding feast, Urung Ulan kills Kiskiskidan by deceit and tries to free Tuyarimako. But when returned, Wat Usutake easily defeats him in battle. The hero is singing his death song. Urung Ulan is saying goodbye to his family and asking Nurgun Botur for help. The Abasi hero kills him. Meanwhile, Nurgun Botur, having returned home with his sister after beating Ese Harbir, finds a fighting arrow, which was left on a joist by his younger brother. An arrow shaft dried to white, and on the place where the arrow pierced, there was thick clotted blood. This is a clear sign of the defeat of the hero. The arrow has rotted and is almost ready to break off. If the campaign continued happily, the wound would keep the original form. Saddened and angry, Nurgun immediately starts a new campaign. His sister stays alone. Having reached the passage to the underworld, Nurgun lets his horse back home and continues his way as a three-sided iron peak, which, arriving in the underworld, tries to pierce the fiery serpent into which turned Wat Usutake. But the enemy dodges and the peak pierces the very center of the underworld, a huge stone pillar. Half of it crumbles like sand. Wat Usutake threatens Nurgun, but all attempts of a fiery serpent fail. Both opponents are taking their form. The battle begins. 30 days, battle gives no advantage to anybody. Only the underworld is collapsing. Nurgun offers a 30 days break to sleep. Wat Usutake accepts his offer. They swear all that time not to attack each other. After this, Wat Usutake immediately falls asleep. Nurgun sets out in search of prisoners imprisoned by the Abasi hero, hears voices and women's weeping. Tuyarimako laments her beauty, because of which the Ayi heroes are killed and her betrothed. In the cave, in the den of the Abasi, Nurgun finds Tuyarimako and Kungjiribine in chains and shackles. Kungjiribine asks to release all 44 imprisoned Ayi heroes, then altogether attack the common enemy. But Nurgun says he is here to release exhausted, barely living prisoners, but not to throw them into the jaws of a powerful enemy. He will continue to fight alone. Then he proposes a plan to crack down on the Abasi. Nurgun requests Tuyarimako to touch a stringing heart of Wat Usutake with tears and beg him to appear in front of her in his original form. Then, Nurgun Botur would suddenly try to attack him. After that, Nurgun instantly disappears, turning into dew. In 30 days comes Wat Usutake as the fiery serpent. Unable to find the enemy, he is worried and suspects some treachery. Tuyarimako cries, reproaching that the groom has never appeared in his own appearance, scaring her with his lycanthropy, and that he never caresses her. She is always alone. It would be better for her to die than to languish without a man in the darkness and solitude. Wat Usutake is glad to hear her words and takes off a 9-layered armor. At this point, suddenly appears Nurgun Botur and stabs him by the long smooth spear. The enemy is defeated. In his death song, Wat Usutake asks Nurgun to beat him completely. But Tuyarimako stops Nurgun, asking not to do it. When Abasi gets a repeated second strike, it can come alive, gaining even more terrible force and cause untold suffering. After his victory over the enemy, Nurgun Botur turns into a grey mouse, finds living water which was hidden away by Ot Usutake, and revives Urung Ulan, who wakes up as if after a long sleep. The brothers then release Tuyarimako and Kungjeribine. Nurgun Botur finds captive Ayi warriors and frees them from the magic rope. Freed 44 Ayi heroes thanked Nurgun for the rescue, praised him, promised to pay him back as good. If not you, then your descendants. A good thing that he had made will not be forgotten. Having said goodbye, freed heroes fly to their countries, some turned into a falcon or an eagle, others just sitting on the clouds. At parting, Nurgun Botur the Swift says to Kungjeribine that in 3 years he will send Urung Ulan to woo his sister Tuyarimako, and their family should be ready for the wedding. During those 3 years, they have to prepare a great feast and games, inviting heroes of all 3 worlds. In 3 years, Urung Ulan with Nurgun Botur come to Saha Sarintoyon and Sabuya Baikhotum to woo Tuyarimako. But there are other suitors ready to compete. The bride's father announces that, at the behest of the god of fate Jilghatoyon, someone who breaks a golden bone, Serai, in which the soul of the universe Kut of a girl is kept, will marry Tuyarimako. Urung Ulan breaks the golden bone, proving that he is destined to marry her. All the Ayi people are happy and welcome him. But the 1/4 of the bride's soul Kut was stolen by the upper world's Abase, Wat Usumu. Nurgun Botur chases him. Urung Ulan marries Tuyarimako, and after the wedding feasts and 3 days, takes his wife home. Before their departure, the bride's mother, Sabuya Baikhotum, sings farewell alges, wishing happiness and prosperity. Urung Ulan with his wife comes home. The wedding lasts 9 days in the valley of Kaladike. But at the end of the 9th night, the upper world Abase Wat Usumu abducts Tuyarimako. After having searched, seized with grief, Urung Ulan is going mad. A captive Tuyarimako was already in the 9th month of pregnancy. In this condition, women were considered unclean. That's how she manages to avoid harassment of the abductor. Wat Usumu leaves for food, having threatened that he would eat her baby when he returns. Left alone, she sings, urging Aisit. She's asking the goddess of childbirth, Aisit, to save her child from a terrible stepfather. Aisit, with the help of an Abase old woman, Iron Jigilikian, kidnaps a boy and hides him in a secluded place in the middle world.
Oğluğa barak son okuyan turan baran, Atçıgınan ahuri bilen bulbutun ere bultan ahabıt. O ki barak son onumanı biler bolat. Yühetten tüspütün bolları düdüttü verüsiliği kırığa karşı yühette.
The lonely boy grows up, getting his food by hunting. Having grown up, he starts to look for his parents. Once, he sees the 9 celestial maidens sitting in 9 nests on 9 twisted spruce. A nameless boy appeals to them. He asks to tell about his origin. The heavenly maidens tell him of his long-suffering parents, his uncle, invincible Nurgun Botur the Swift, and tell the boy his own name, Oğotulayık, orphan. Passing on, he meets a white Siberian crane. This is a reincarnation of a great warrioress, Nurgun. Nurgun asks good spirits of heaven to give the boy a strong horse, warriors' weapons and armor. She tells him about the fate of his parents and his uncle Nurgun the Mighty. Then she asks the boy to tell his uncle that Nurgun Botur should immediately come to her until she gets over his road. The boy was surprised that a woman can compete with his uncle. At the behest of the god of fate Г.Г.Колесова, the celestial shamans stopped the storm and released Nurgun from magic spells. They tell him that in order to win an equal enemy in the upcoming big battles, he must undergo heroic hardening, swim in the dead water. Having turned into an animal iron fish of the underworld, Nurgun bathed in the dead water, which crumbles a stone cliff as big as a hill. After that endurance, Nurgun Botur immediately goes to the abductor of Tuyarımako and arrives at Wat Osuma at a time when he was just raising after falling during an unsuccessful pursuit of a newborn son of Tuyarımako, who was fleeing to the savior goddess Isis. Nurgun Botur requires to return his brother's wife, but Wat Osuma doesn't want to. The battle begins. Warring heroes cause such untold suffering to the earth that their lord, Ulutuyar Ulu Sorun Toyon, reports to the deities. The deities, understanding that the equal heroes do not want to stop the fight, decide to apply to them a terrible measure, to test each of them by weeping blood, heavenly fire rope Halbashara in the upper world, the magic rope revolving over a fiery sea. Let one of them survive and triumph, they decide. Nurgun Botur, having turned into a falcon, sits first on the Halbashara and stands the test, showing not only the strength and agility, but also proving the rightness of the case for which he fights. Wat Osuma does not withstand the test and dies. His sister, the Abasa shamaness Wat Kutale, manages to save one of his kuts from which she is trying to revive her brother in the rail cradle. If that happened, he would become even more powerful and terrible warrior. But Nurgun, turning into an eagle, wins the shamaness, destroys the cradle and kills a toad, the sole embryo of the future monster. After the victory, Nurgun is barely alive. At this time, Oğotulayaq finds his father and, being blessed, goes in search for his mother. He finds her in the upper world in the den of Wat Osumo. Together, they find exhausted Nurgun Botur, and Tuyarmako is breastfeeding him, which gives much strength. Oğotulayaq tells the words of Kız Nurgun to his uncle. Nurgun Botur, having blessed his nephew, orders to quickly take her mother home and says that a girl named Haçılanko is destined as a bride for him, and that Oğotulayaq should quickly go after her, because the hero of the underworld, Timir Dıbırdan, is now on his way to propose to her. After the victory over Wat Osumo, Nurgun Botur goes to his bride, Kız Nurgun. But now he doesn't think of getting married, but of revenge. She wanted to cross his road, to shed his blood, to humiliate him and to turn him into a slave. The hero comes to her country, and there he sees a huge mound of ice shelter. The hero enters. Mistress is asleep, removing her battle armor. Nurgun Botur does not want to disturb her and lies on the other bunk and falls asleep too. Waking up, he sees her in full armor standing beside him. The power and beauty of her amaze the hero. When she asks why he had come to her, Nurgun, forgetting about his revenge, answers that he is here to woo and requests for an immediate answer. Kız Nurgun reminds him that she won all her suitors so far. She offers him a fight, saying that everything would depend on the outcome of this struggle, and warns that if she wins, Nurgun will have to get out. Nurgun wins. The girl warriors is aggrieved that he humiliated her dignity, dropping her onto the ground, and dares him to fight again. Nurgun Botur is surprised by his bride's behavior, and he reminds her that he has no instructions of the gods to offend the Ayi people. He cannot fight with the bride. He is here to marry her. But she is relentless, and the battle starts again. In 30 days, he wins her and drops her onto the ground. But having the gift of reincarnation, Kız Nurgun flies away, turning into smoke, and says she will ask for protection from the hero wizard Alip-Hara, and offers Nurgun Botur to catch her up. The groom immediately sets off for her on his black horse. But on the shore of the Sea of Resin, his faithful friend stops and sings in a human voice that he can't go further. Nurgun, releasing the horse to the middle world, turns into a steel spear and flies over the sea. Then turns into a bumblebee and flies to the Abbasil lair. Arriving at Alip-Hara's place, Kız Nurgun asks him protection from the Ayi hero pursuing her. Spider Monster is very pleased. The Abasi is happy, hugging the warriors by 6 big hands and beetle crushes, sniffing, sings that he never yields his coppery-chested bird. The hero outrages by the behavior of Nurgun and is going immediately to cross swords with Alibhara. But at this moment, he sees the brother of his bride, the hero Handargistai, plunged into the fiery quagmire by Alibhara. Handargistai asks Nurgun to save him, and the hero, remembering his appointment to save completely all who are in trouble, leaves the enemy, turns into a falcon, and enters into a fiery morass, previously having called his elder sister Udagan for help, who immediately arrives. He cuts through the bloody haze of hell surrounding fiery quagmire, cuts a magical rope into 8 parts, which bound Handargistai, and the latter, jumping out of the bottomless swell, immediately engages Alibhara. Black swamp now envelopes Nurgun himself by bloody haze heat, and the magic rope instantaneously twists around his body 8 times. Nurgun Botur, supported by 2 strong threads, formed by eyes radiation of his elder sister, celestial shaman Pai, cuts the magic rope and jumps on solid ground. The 2 heroes quickly overcome Alibhara, the wizard. They are happy. Only Nurgun does not share their joy. She cannot forget how Nurgun humiliated her. She is offended by the fact that he despises her for contacting Alibhara. Despite the entreaties of her brother, she hits Nurgun Botur by a sword, but missing, instead of the dodging hero, gets in a block of stone and crumbles to dust. Due to the impact, a bloody flame rises, mighty lightning sparkle in the sky, thunder crashes 3 times in the air. The bride and the groom start fighting without rest for another 30 days. And the people and the rulers of the under and upper worlds report to their supreme deity, Urung Ulan, complaining about the groom and the obstinate bride. The people of the middle world outrage that those who are intended to save them from evil and disaster inflict all troubles themselves. The old people of the middle world accuse Nurgun that instead of getting married, she is fighting with her fiancé and brings destruction to her land. By the order of Urung Ulan, 6 white celestial shamans disconnect the bride and the groom and make her go through the rite of purification. By 9-tailed iron rod, they cleanse the body of Nurgun from the spirit of war, which penetrated all her flesh and blood in the form of worms and snakes, which strew on the fire. Then heavenly Udagan shamans enliven Nurgun by divine moisture. Her flesh and blood are now free from the spirit of militancy, and she becomes even more beautiful. The shaman tells everybody that Handargistai and Italinko are destined to marry. Ogotulaya, having received the blessing of his parents, goes to marry Hachilan Ku. Along the way, he meets his rival, Timir Jiberdan. In this battle, Timir Jiberdan wins Ogotulaya. Hachilan Ku and young brothers failed to help their friend. Then Ogotulaya calls Nurgun Botur to help, his uncle. Nurgun Botur the Swift and Kis Nurgun quickly win Timir Jiberdan and kill him. After the victory over the Abase, Ogotulaya with young heroes, the bride's brothers, goes to his bride Hachilan Ku to ask in marriage. Nurgun Botur and his bride Kis Nurgun and Aitalin Ku with her fiancé Hanjargistai go home. Coming to the area of Nurgun Botur, celebrated 2 weddings, celebrated an unprecedented feast. So, on the fertile middle ground, gifted with every abundance, endowed with unwavering faith, surrounded by a happy family, lived happily, say, defender of the Saha people, mighty warrior, Nurgun Botur. Tağız bıla soğukta Tunav gülüm düğünde Duyarıma oğubu Tospadaydu nuruger Kabire kamis boruger Keden sükten berikten Sahatın attıtın Sargıdalı ulatın Ey 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 Oh 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 oh